This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where it's all about getting the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. Brought to you by Itamar Shafir, founder and CEO of Umbrella, the technology platform and brand that is powering thousands of marketing agencies around the country. Find him at umbrellaus.com. Now, here's your host, Kevin Prewett.
This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, and my name is Kevin Prewett. I'm the host. Honored to be here with my guest today, who is an entrepreneur, podcast host, and community builder. He experienced the Gulf War as a young refugee in Kuwait, witnessing the strength of community while evacuating the population to safety. As the co-founder of Boast.Al, he leveraged the community-led growth model to bootstrap the company to 8-figure revenue and secure over $100 million in funding, while also co-founding Traction, a community empowering over 100,000 innovators through connections, content, and capital. So much to unpack here. Lloyd Lobo, I want to welcome you to the Marketing Umbrella Podcast.
What great energy, Kevin. Thank you for the intro. You make me look like a rock star. I'm just a small time guy trying to figure it out like all of us.
Well, I think the thing that I've really appreciated is the fact that how consistent you are in branding. I mean, every time I've seen you in interviews, you've got that hat on. So, I mean, that should be the first thing that we recognize in this, if you're watching this on YouTube.
Somebody told me, actually, it was advice from a great entrepreneur, a couple of people. Nick Mehta, Gainsight, one of the best community builders on the planet. He created the customer success category out of thin air and built this massive community before they even had a product. And he always come to our events wearing like red shoes and sunglasses, and he's like, stand out, right? And then there's this other person, which we all know, Mr. Beast.
Yeah.
If you're in tech in general, if you're living, I find it very few people don't know Mr. Beast. What does Mr. Beast do? I mean, a lot of what he did is stand out, right? Like who cured 1,000 blind people, gave a homeless guy 20,000. He got this panther with like pink, purple on his on the logo. I mean, even with all he does, it's pretty unaverage, right? He could have kept the millions from sponsors and bought a yacht or a private jet or something. But you know what? Those who are afraid to be a little eccentric, a little authentic, and a little different often blend in with the rest. And if you're just like everyone else, you don't have a shot of being an iconic brand.
There is absolutely true. And I think it's interesting because often people talk about, you know, they want to set themselves apart, you know, in a certain way, branding wise, but they did that as an adult after they started their service or company. I think your story begins much, much earlier than that. So you don't have the typical childhood. So walk us through that story of coming out of, you know, Kuwait as a young child.
Definitely. So it's the funniest story because I was a fourth grader, 8 or 9 years old. I can't remember, 9. And I was a serial procrastinator as a kid. And to some extent that carried on, but now I get over my procrastinating by taking 3 or 4 things at a time. And then I do the thing that I love the most. So something gets done every day.
And that's the reverse of eat the frog, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the reverse of eat the frog. But I studied for a math exam and went in and it was a geography exam. And I'm like, geez, I'm failing this. Then summer rolled around. My mom wakes me up one day and she's like, son, we can't go to school anymore. We got to get out of the country. A war has hit. And my first reaction was, yes, you're never going to find out I failed. When it sank in, though, their faces were like filled with worry, right? The currency had become invalid. They weren't sure if they were going to live or die. They don't know where they're going to go. And it's a time when there was cell phones and internet didn't exist.
Yeah.
So that's how the journey started. And that was my first experience with entrepreneurship and community, because what is entrepreneurship at the end of the day? It's taking an idea and turning into an outcome while dealing with extreme uncertainty and risk in the process. You have an idea, you want to get it to a positive outcome, but on the path is a lot of uncertainty and risk. And community, those were my 2 biggest learnings that day. I went down the building with my dad And there were a bunch of concerned faces. And they're like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And immediately they started self-organizing. You know what? I'm going to guard the building from this time to this time because there's no security. Everyone's gone. And somebody's like, you know what? I'll organize food. And somebody else is like, I'm going to organize this other thing. And some people are like, oh, we've got family whose house has been bombed. So people are like, okay, if you don't have a place, we'll take them in, or we'll coordinate with the schools to see if we can give them shelter, all of this stuff. So what is community effectively? You look around and say, I have this problem or I have an aspiration, and others say, yes, I do too. And you come together to take it forward. So that day I experienced this very important thing, that it's not products or things, it's people that drive everything, right? And every building became a sub-community that coordinated with the next building and the next building. And this word of mouth spread, got to the UN. There was this mass evacuation that happened and coordinated with people's countries. My parents were from India, so we needed, we weren't Kuwaiti citizens. We needed to get evacuated to India. So all of these things got coordinated, grassroots, and evacuated us to safety. And I'll never forget when that bus that took us on the highway of death from Kuwait to Baghdad to Jordan, and as we were going on that bus, everything is bombed, right? Like, if you don't have currency, like, it's done. And these adults should have been stressed out and crying and miserable. But as I looked around the bus, people were like laughing and singing and playing the guitar, singing Bollywood songs. I'm like, what is going on here, right? And I learned probably the most valuable lesson that's key to building communities, key to building companies. It's neither the destination, it's nor the journey. It's the companions that matter the most. You could be on a crappy journey on the way to hell, but great companions make it memorable. I mean, you can ask yourself this, right? You may be in some exquisite place, but surrounded by energy vampires, and you just want to be out of there.
Yeah, and you mentioned that in another interview that I was watching earlier today. You said something about that very thing, and I want to drill down on community because it's such a big part of your life and so many facets of your life. But let's talk about the journey itself early. So how does one go from failing the test as a 9-year-old to saying, you know what, I think I just want to be a kind of a serial entrepreneur here. I just want to start. I'm a startup of startups here. So what's that? Walk us through that journey real quickly.
Yeah, so all my life, right, I dealt with a lot of this risk. I had this appetite for risk. That was a rush, right, as a kid. And so after that, my life of uncertainty happened. Moved to India briefly. Then my parents relocated to United Arab Emirates briefly, then moved back to Kuwait. So all my life was like uncertain all the time. And I just enjoyed that. I think innately I developed this thrill for risk. And fast forward a few years after the Gulf War, ended up in Canada. My parents immigrated to Canada, went to university. Then the university story was even funnier. I didn't have a high school diploma. Okay. I didn't finish high school. I applied to university, and one of the colleges got back and said, hey, why don't you do these entrance exams? I wrote those entrance exams because there are no SATs in Canada. And they're like, what are your transcripts? I'm like, oh, there's political unrest in Kuwait and don't have them. And they're like, okay, just start the semester because your entrance scores were really good. After a semester, they stopped following up, and I graduated. I kid you not, this is the funniest thing. My life has been like luck, right? taking risk and being lucky. I mean, I'm telling you, people don't believe in luck, but luck is the 20% that tips the 80% in your favor. So I graduated engineering without the high school diploma. I mean, the reality was I didn't finish high school. I just ditched all my high school board exams. So as a function of that, I just had a lot of people I knew that I admired were all entrepreneurs. So I asked this founder or entrepreneur I admire, family member, what is the best skill I could have if I wanted to go in a business? And we say entrepreneur, but back then we call them businessmen because they were not running tech businesses. He ran a chain of hardware stores, and he's like sales. He's like, that's the one skill you need to learn. So I graduate engineering, and the first job I take is cold calling because I applied to a bunch of sales jobs, and people were like, what? You just finished engineering, software engineering? Why would you take you? So I just begged and got like my foot in the door making cold calls. And my parents, imagine Indian parents, son finished engineering, had to hang their heads in shame because he's
Son,
making
please don't come home. That's right.
you're dialing for dollars, and you've lived in that part of the world, right? So you know how it is, right? In the Middle East, India, Asia, like, it's a, you live all your life to see your kids get educated to be engineers and doctors, and then they take a job doing cold calling. What are you doing? But fast forward today, it's the skill that has served me the most, because that selling is everything, right? From validating the idea, talking to customers, evangelizing people on your vision, talking to investors, media, it drives everything. It helps you pivot on the fly,
Right.
polish your messaging. So that was a good skill. So I took cold calling, and it just so happened that the only company that would give me a job was a small company, and I was cold calling for them. So again, your companions mattered the most. So that's where I got to see the CEO and other people on the leadership team very frequently, and made my journey. After that job, I moved to the United States. My girlfriend, then wife now, was in med school, and she's like, I'm never going to move to Canada. So I moved to New Jersey, working at a startup, and the CEO quit a month after I joined the startup, and it was like 14, 15 people, and they're like, hey, this is on you, figure it out, right? So I end up doing a little bit of selling, a little bit of product, a little bit of like basically talk to customers, figure out what to build, tell us what to build the website, build everything. So I ended up learning a lot of that. And as a function of that, my journey into entrepreneurship started, because the next job also was at a startup. And then I ended up working in this one startup where the CEO was like all about work, hustle, hustle, hustle. And he would say, I see everyone is a lemon. I want to squeeze as much as possible. I would be in the office till 9 or 10. It was fine for me, because my wife was in residency at the time. And so she was always working. And one fine day, one week, I started going home at 6. And I got a call from him saying, why don't you, I used to love it when you were in the office till 9 or 10. Your wife's a resident working 100 hours a week. What's causing you to go home early? And the thing was, I hadn't seen my parents in a year or so, because they live in Canada, and they were visiting, and that's why I was going home. So that day when I went home, I was just like so sad. We sucked the wind out of me with this comment and this email when I got home, right? Alex Popa, my co-founder at Boast, was my best friend from college. We're partners in every project. And after engineering, he got into Johnson & Johnson's engineering leadership program, which is a very rare thing to get. Like, they take 2 per country per year. And then he did a startup. It didn't work out. And he felt he needed to study accounting skills. That's why he failed. So his unique combo of accounting and engineering took him into the world of tax credits. Big Four hired him.
Wow.
And, every year globally, hundreds of billions of dollars are given in innovation funding and R&D tax credits to fund businesses. But it's a cumbersome application process. It's prone to frustrating audits. It takes a long time to get the money. So Alex called me. He's like, I want to go on my own. The first thing I said to him, man, I'm like, dude, I don't care what we do. If we build a company that I want to work for, if I can build a company I want to work for, I'm in. And that's how the journey into entrepreneurship started. But honestly, if it wasn't the appetite for risk, which was embedded in me from that Gulf War experience,
right,
and the DNA of community and giving, and then seeking that, I probably wouldn't be doing this, right? Because the natural reaction is default to comfort. And my natural reaction in life is, whenever things get comfortable, I get bored and I don't want to do it anymore, right?
I think that's the DNA, the theory that I have about entrepreneurs versus just business, those that just run businesses. I mean, they're different animals. They are different genetically. I think they're different, So you'd had an exit though prior to Boast, right?
No exits prior to Boast. They were all like failures. Like, 2 companies failed. One of them, I was on the founding team of that raised $6 million, was building an AI chatbot, AI sales assistant for reps, and it failed. Then we prior to that, did Automatically, which was a chatbot for customer success in 2013-14, customer service, and that failed. So we were playing with AI long before. So no exits. No exits, piss poor. My wife was paying the bills. Fortunately, again, luck, right? I met her. She became a physician. She made the money to pay the bills. And so it was a lot of luck, because her parents never wanted me to marry her. They were like, this guy is like bumbling from startup to startup. He's into all kinds of things we don't understand. He doesn't want to do his master's degree. He's not in education. My wife got into med school in second year of undergrad without MCATs. So she's bright and brilliant.
That's incredible.
So when we were supposed to get married in India 2 days before the wedding was called off. And my wife, so how I got into it, learning to host events was 9 months later when we did get married. I planned the whole wedding because she's like, I don't want to deal with it. You planned the wedding. So I, Excel and everything. I like gave her the dream wedding that she wanted. But you learn from every failure, right? It's never failure. It's always learning. And so that's the thing you have to embrace. But that skill, see, like every failure teaches you a skill.
There is no doubt about it.
Gulf War taught me about community, taught me about dealing with ambiguity and risk. The wedding that was called off taught me about event planning and I had to give her the dream wedding. 300 people end up showing up or more. And that planning of events and community and taking risks is how we bootstrap Boast to 10 million in revenue. When we got to 10 million, we had no marketing department. We had no marketing person. All we did was a lot of community events. We hosted events, and we hosted events online, offline, and we put that on steroids, right? Every time more and more people would show up, and our salespeople were more like community managers. They were BD people. They were going the community to events, shake hands, kiss babies, be these broker of resources, help people out. And as a function of that visibility, we started becoming credible. Visibility turned into credibility, and credibility turned into profitability.
I've heard you talk about you've mentioned the word product market fit. I've heard you talk about how granular you got about that early. You said you'll find 10 people. Find 10 people that will buy the product, that will use the product, whatever. Then turn those 10 people into 50 people. Then those 50 people into whatever the next group is. But really get so uber focused, on that one thing. Focus on one thing. Stay the course for that one thing type thing. So,
yeah, definitely. One of the things is, as business leaders and people in general, we're used to chasing a lot of shiny objects. I used to as well. But focus is everything, right? Like if you, for example, early in the days, try to serve many, many kinds of customers, you'll never understand one problem set and you'll serve nobody. It'll be hard to scale. Or in the early days, you say like, oh, I'm going to be on like LinkedIn, and I'm going to be on email newsletter, and I'm going to do events, and I'm going to run some ads, and I'm going to have a blog. You do like 100 things and you do them all mediocre. You're going to be doomed. You'll never scale, right? There's great value in one kind of customer who comes through one kind of channel, who gets one kind of value, right? So that focus is very key, but honing in on product market fit. So after being a part of only tech startups and then building a couple of tech startups myself, all our life we chase this, build a product, sell it, build a product, sell it. And we realized that, there's only one way to build a successful company, at least in the early days, right? And that one way, and you cannot get away from this. Mm-hmm. Eventually, to scale it and make revenue, there's multiple ways, but there's only one way to will a company into existence, is to talk to customers.
Yeah,
there's no substitute for it. Yes, now there's Slack, which has got hundreds, and Dropbox and all of that, but all of these people did one thing very specific in the early days: founder-led sales. In a way, they talk to people. Whether it's on chat or whether it's on the phone or whether it's on email, they reached out to a specific audience, they understood the pain, and they solved for them, right? And then they scaled, and so the framework there is, say you're an agency, for example, and you want to build a tech startup someday. You have one thing that's phenomenal that most tech startups don't have. They're starting with no customers, no product, right? So Boast, after doing a couple of tech companies, Boast was able to bootstrap to 10 million with no investor money by doing one thing. We started by selling a service. Now, if you look at UiPath, which had one of the largest IPOs, it's a It's an automation company, automated online robots, if you will, for ease of understanding, right? Robotic process automation. They started by selling services. Basecamp, which everyone knows, they created Ruby on Rails, and they wrote a lot of books on building tech startups, started as an agency, right? So at Boast, we started by selling a service. We started offering this, will help you get money from the government better, faster, cheaper than anyone else out there. The thing is, customers want an outcome. They don't want software. They don't want, customers don't want marketing software. They want more leads. They don't want fitness apps. They want to get fit. And when a customer buys a service from you, you are being held outcome to deliver that. You are held accountable to deliver that outcome, right? And so I think selling a service is so underrated, but actually it's what helps you get off the ground in the early days, doing things that don't scale, doing things manually, right? And so our Boast journey started something like this. We found an ideal customer profile, right? One with a recurring need that wasn't super hot at the time. So when we started, we were going after the software market, and all our competition were going after more established businesses, right? We're going after the software startup market, and everyone is going after established business, and they'd laugh at us. These startups are never going to last. They're never going to last. This is 2012. Fast forward 10 years is the fastest growing segment, right? So one of the things is, bet on a TAM, a market that you have conviction on, that's going to grow, and go
it's
deep
not there
after
yet.
that niche.
Yeah.
It's not. It's just starting to develop. Like, nobody wanted to serve startups before, right? Like, now you see all these banks and accounting firms and law firms all have startup programs and startup discounts. In 2012, nobody cared for them, right? Nobody. They couldn't even create a bank account for that matter. And so we said, we'll service them. We'll go after them because we're startup founders ourselves, right? We've been through this journey before. And so we went after that. It was an unsexy niche that nobody really cared about. And we literally understood them. We went out there and we said, where do they eat, breathe, drink, sleep? What are their needs? What are their goals? What are their aspirations? What stands in the way of achieving that? Who are the people they follow? What are the tools they pay for? Where do they hang out? That helped us create a circle of influence around them, right? That helped us create this understanding that ICP helped us create a circle of influence around them. And once you have that, then everything else stems from that. We went out there, and there's a few ways to do it. One is, once you have a theory, and it helps if you are that ICP too. So once you have the theory, you research, like, okay, where do they hang out, right? Okay, I want to serve a startup founder. Okay, what is the large total addressable market? It's growing. Okay, now what is my immediate target market? I was in San Francisco. Alex, my co-founder, was in Calgary at the time. So I just went and moved in with him in Calgary, lived out of his spare bedroom. And so we're like, our immediate target market was all the entrepreneurs and startup ecosystem in Calgary. So we're like, what are all the events happening? Where do these people hang out? What are the groups that serve them? And so we started flooding them, like visibility, right? I said visibility, credibility, then profitability. And when we started flooding that market and going out there, we started talking to more and more entrepreneurs, because we tried the other way. We tried cold calling first, and nobody would talk to us, right? Because they're like, why should we give you our R&D data so you can do these filed claims for us when there's other more established people? We're giving you our valuable IP here. Like, your two guys you made disappear. So we started going out in the community, talking to people, building these relationships and trying to understand. And one thing we understood very clearly, these entrepreneurs, ultimately, why do they want money to fund their business? Why do they want to fund their business? To drive growth. Why do they want to drive growth? To create some downstream impact. And so our messaging really evolved from, we automate tax credits, to our vision is to enable innovators to change the world. Why? Because every dollar spent in innovation returns 20 to the economy. Vaccines, robots, clean drinking water is a function of innovation. Yet 90+% of the innovations die on the vine. And in the last 15 years, more than 50% of the Fortune 500 companies have evaporated because they don't have the know-how or the capital to innovate in the right direction. So our vision became enabling innovators to change the world. Our purpose became enabling innovators to change the world. Our vision became accelerating innovation, where basically a vision is what would the world look like as a function of your purpose. Our mission became, how do we do this? Meaning we do that through capital and know-how. And then our values became give to the community. And so we found through the events we were attending and hosting that there were a lot of high-level talks. Nobody was giving behind the scenes of how they went from A to B to C.
Yeah.
So we now say, once you figure out ICP, you've gone out there in the community, whether you've cold emailed, you've cold called, you've leveraged LinkedIn. At the time, there was not many people using LinkedIn as actively as they were today. So in-person was the only way. I love in-person though, by the way. Nothing like we're sound and sight right now. Right. If we were in person, it would be touch, taste, smell, would be grabbing a meal together. You build stronger connections in person, and the world knows this. That's why we're going from offline or online to offline again, right? Like hybrid environments and so on. It's indispensable, the emotional connection in person. So we went out there and that supercharged it because we're just going to events. And then we said the one common thread here is these founders want to grow their business. They lack capital and know-how. Capital we're going to solve by automating these tax credits for them and funding, and then partnering with other capital providers who can bring them other sources of capital. And then the know-how will solve by hosting events that share real tactical knowledge on how I got from A to B to C. So we started hosting meetups. The first meetup we did, like 10 people showed up. We're like, great, right? We emailed the people we met and we saw online. And it wasn't like now it went from cold calling or cold emailing saying, buy my stuff, to saying, hey, we're hosting an event that solves this problem with this speaker, Social Proof, who's an influencer for you. And we have only 10 spots. Would you be willing to join? I'm sending you an invite. Right? And you came.
So that's scarcity model.
The next event, like more people showed up. And then one day, 200 people came to an event we did at the co-working space. And they're like, guys, this is not a pizza night. This is a conference. You can't do this at the co-working space. That evolved into eventually becoming the Traction Conference and the Traction community. We found a great partner in Launch Academy, which is a nonprofit out of Vancouver, to do all the logistics and help us out. And so that evolved into it because we couldn't afford to hire teams to host these events, right? Big marketing teams and whatnot. So we partnered with a nonprofit and it became win-win. We're like, we're building a community. We don't have to own this community. We can find the right partners and do it together, right? Nobody owns the community ultimately. And so that was the journey. And if you look at it now, we started as a service. We've identified the ICP. We figured out their pains, their needs, goals, aspirations. We figured out what stands in their way. Then we figured out who do they follow, meaning who are the influencers. So those influencers we could invite to our meetups as speakers. We figured out what other services they pay for, so we'd invite them as sponsors, right? To have booths. And then where do they frequent, meaning what platforms do they hang out on, so we could promote their partner there. Like they read TechCrunch, so we'd invite a journalist from TechCrunch to our conferences. But if you look at this, it's very much like, say you go to a party, you get an invite, you walk in, nobody's there to open the door, you climb through some trash, you meet random people that you don't know, and you're like, man, I'm leaving. Right? You're out of there. But say you walk in now to this party where the host opens the door for you, pours you a glass of wine, introduce you to 3 people, and you're like, oh, they're agency owners. Man, this is Seth Godin. Geez, Seth Godin's at this party. And then you walk a little further and you see like other vendors. You see like the folks from HubSpot and you see the folks from Google Analytics. You're like, I'm in my tribe. I'm like, this is a cool event. I know I'm 1 degree away from everybody. I know everybody. Yeah. Right. And so that's the thing. When you don't understand your ideal customer profile, you cannot understand their circle of influence. And then you try to please everyone and you make it harder on yourself. But when you understand one ICP when starting out, you can carpet bomb their circle of influence and then do that visibility, credibility, profitability model. And that's what we did. So we started with the ICP. Then we talked to these people and we started as a function of doing these events, the word started spreading, because now we're like, oh, you're the good guys. If like you have the CEO of Twilio or the CEO of Zoho coming to your conferences, you guys are the good guys. So we leverage that social proof to build relationships with partners, with prospects, and we started getting customers. Now, the thing is, we started getting paid to do this work manually, and nothing makes the rubber hit the road faster than getting feedback from paying customers, right? No outcome equals no customer. So by doing the work manually, you learn the exact step-by-step process to deliver those customer outcomes, and you get a better understanding of what to build.
And all roads lead back to community.
Exactly. Exactly. Right.
Every tangent you've gone on in the last couple of minutes, it eventually comes back to community. And I know that's kind of like, if you have a foundation in life, I think that's it. The idea that, community almost drives everything. And it's universal. I mean, the process you described, doesn't matter what the service is, doesn't matter what the product is, it is a universal process.
It is a universal process. So, I don't know if you guys have heard of these blue zones, right? There's a lot of talk about these blue zones, which are 5 towns in the world where people live functionally to be 100. Okay. 5 out of their 9 common traits are to do with community.
I mean, Okinawa is always at the top of that list,
Yeah, it's community, it's social connection, it's family, it's religious connection, it's meditating together, it's walking together. Diet. So diet, also they eat together. So diet is part of it, right? But like, I think the key things are like social connections and connectivity and going out and socializing, being part of a religious community, those kinds of things, right? So the key is a community. Your companions matter the most. You could be with toxic people and destroy your mental health, and you could be in a slum and feel like a rock star. So I'll tell you the slum story. My parents, my mom grew up in the slum of Mumbai. They made a movie on it, Slumdog Millionaire, right? So she had 9 siblings. Every summer I'd go to India. I would see in their house, in that little house, or we can't even call it a house. It was like whatever, makeshift. You can look up how it was, like made of like mud with some asbestos or whatever it is, like ceiling. It was awful. And every time there's somebody or the other staying there, and I'd ask, like, why do you have this stranger here? Mumbai was like the New York City of India, right? And still is. People pass by there. And I would always hear this, that the only way to create abundance is to help others without expecting anything in return. That's community, right? That is the ethos of community. And I kept hearing this over and over and over again. You know what happened? My mom and 9 of her siblings do not live in that slum anymore. Not only are they well off, all of their kids are well off. So I feel a lot of what I have, the luck, because think about it this way. We sold half of the company and exited at the time of the pandemic. A lot of people that raised lots of money during the pandemic are crying right now, right? Because they raised at higher valuations. Now they can't meet that valuation. If we waited 2 years to make this deal, or if that deal like just didn't happen, anything goes south, right? We would be crying right now too.
Yeah.
Because it's not an easy time. So what is that? I genuinely feel a lot of what I have and own in my life in terms of peace of mind and friendships all over the world is a function of the karma generated from my grandparents, is that community. This is a goodwill, right? You become the sum of the collective goodwill you put out there. And I'm not trying to say this in a very, like, I'm not trying to like make people puke with my cheesiness, because sometimes people will be like, what are you talking about? Like, business is business. You're like bringing emotion in business. Until and unless the day robots buy from robots, business decisions will always have emotion behind it. And that emotion will always overpower rationality. And that is the reality of the situation, right? Yep. Like this, you're too emotional is the biggest BS business trope, because ultimately buyers also buy with emotion. And
that's what you said earlier. You said, customers buy outcome. They want the outcome. They don't want the service of the product.
So, and what is the outcome? Outcome sparks an emotion,
how
right?
I feel about this. Yeah.
Exactly. How do I feel as a function of using your product? And so after you've delivered the service manually, you know exactly what to build. Then you can, today in 2023, it's amazing, right? There's so many no code, low code tools that you could use to digitize the manual work. Like Boast's first version was built using Zoho Creator and Zapier. And then, because if you're doing a service manually, there's a few steps, right? You're either collecting information, then you're making sense of that information, and then you're doing workflow. So if you're collecting information manually, now through APIs and integrations, you can pull it in automatically as best as you can. If it's unstructured data, then you got to write code to normalize that data. Then you analyze that data, and then the last one is workflow. Do this, that, the other thing. And I'm oversimplifying it because it's not that easy. But if you try to do it all at once in terms of automating a service, you will fail. So the best thing is to look at each step in the chain of, hey, how do I collect data? How do I make sense of that data? How do I do workflow on that data? Like, what are the jobs I'm trying to do? What are the tasks within each of those jobs? And how do I deliver a delighted state for each of those jobs? I think that's the way to look at it.
And regardless of the like we said a second ago, regardless of the product or service that you're trying to to sell or trying to provide for your community. But I want to grab something real quick here that I don't want to miss this. So you've got a book that's coming out soon or has come out. So I want to make sure that we get this on the record here. So talk about that and how that relates to community.
Definitely. So my book is called From Grassroots to Greatness, 13 Rules to Build Iconic Brands with Community-Led Growth. And so what happened was, I said, like, my whole DNA is community, from, the values of the slums of India, of Mumbai, to being a Gulf War refugee, leverage the community to bootstrap Boast to 10 million in revenue. In between, the founder's journey is always up. One day it's great, one day it's crashing. Just when things started to get better at Boast and we started to make money, me and my wife, we were expecting twins, and one of the twins passed. And the other one had to be pulled out 4.5 months premature. And we were seeing in the NICU babies die left, right, and center. And we relied on the physicians' moms community to help us to sanity. My wife was constantly on there. Just hope, right? Community is also, sometimes it's not with a bang, it's with a hug that you get comfort. And so that hope kept her alive and sane. And, it led to positive thoughts. And I truly believe if you think negative, you attract the negative. And sometimes, you'll see this, like, piece it together. If you keep thinking negative things will happen. So just thinking that positive thing over and over again, getting words of positivity, encouragement, and what to do and how to handle the situation helped us sail through that. Then a couple of years later, we exited Boast. The thing is, I had built my identity around this company. I was the face of the company everywhere on stage. And when I left the day-to-day operations of the company, I hit rock bottom. I got depressed. I got anxiety, and it was my tribe. I was losing something which was a big part of me. And I got depressed, drunk, overweight, became insufferable. And I started just calling random friends. Hey, I'm showing up to Barcelona. I'm just going to fly you there. Let's meet. Or they're like, listen, we have jobs. I'm like, listen, I am going to fly you there. Now, it was funny because I went to Romania once to speak at a conference. And at the conference after party, we're in the middle of now somewhere in the wilderness in Romania. I got a call from friends saying, we're in Costa Rica. Come. And I leave that party. This is how insane I went mentally. I leave the conference, and this is 2 a.m. I'm frantically dialing for Ubers, calling for Ubers. And they're like, what are you trying to do? I'm like, trying to get an Uber. I think I'm going to go to Costa Rica. They're like, what? Out of nowhere. I'm like, yeah, I have some friends who messaged me, and I'm like, I already did my talk at the conference. I hung out with you guys a couple days. I'm off. The Uber showed up finally, maybe after half an hour, I end up getting an Uber. That is now, we're at this place that is 3.5 hours from the airport. Right. So I call this Uber, comes. I'm like, can you wait 5 minutes? I was just waiting for you to get here. I pull my laptop. I book the ticket to Romania, to Costa Rica. I get in the car. We drive to the airport. I head to Costa Rica. That's how crazy I became, right? And then my wife, being a physician, she understands mental health and all this very well. She let me be. And then one fine day, she comes to me. I think 6-8 months had elapsed, and she's like, "Dude, look at you, right? You are become insufferable. You become crazy, and your health is dwindling. If something happens to you, your family is going to be left holding the bag. Do you want that for your kids?" And she's like, "You might not get a third chance," because previously I was a workaholic. Then the exit happened, and I kept telling her, I'm, I'll make you guys whole. I'll take you guys to Bora Bora, right? And she's like, "Nobody cares about your Bora Bora. We care about spending time with you, not like the one trip once or twice a year. We want to be with you, dinners, phones down." But I'm like, "Listen, the due diligence on this is crazy. There's so much to do." Anyway, that happened. The deal went through, and I booked everyone to Bora Bora, but I wake up one morning few days before the Bora Bora trip, unable to breathe, and I had bilateral COVID pneumonia. I was hospitalized, right?
Wow.
And so came back from that hospitalization, and then a few months elapsed. I parted from the day-to-day of the company, and now I completely became insufferable. So she's like, "You might not get a third chance. You came back from like surviving COVID and being in the hospital." And that was a big realization for me. That night I couldn't sleep, and as I looked across the room, my Peloton bike was there, and it was turned into a makeshift towel rack for a few.
Just throw clothes on it. That's right.
So many clothes on it. I hop on it. I'm like, "Let me switch this on," right? And I see this instructor, Robin Arzon. She hops on, and she was a bit off, and she was saying like, she was just coming back from maternity and she doesn't feel as strong. And then she yells out, "Self-pity is toxic. It takes one ride, one shift, one walk around the block. I can." With Eye of the Tiger from Rocky playing.
Yeah.
That amped me up. That one ride went off in like 2 seconds. I don't know what happened. And then one ride turned to 2, turned to 4. And I became hooked to this Peloton community. And so for the 5th time, the community was there to take me to sanity. And then we ended up moving to Dubai later, and said, "Okay, well, let's go to a place where people think of life and work very differently than Silicon Valley," right? And so now I came upon all this free time in a new place, all the freedom in the world, no job. I'm like, "What do I do?" And I'm like, my brother comes to me and he says, "You have one thing that's common in your life." He's like, "Everywhere you go, you bring people together. Your family, even like your extended family, we don't meet when you're not there. But when you come, you bring everyone together." And then he started helping me think through like the Kuwait and Traction. And, even when I came to Dubai through the Traction community, we hosted like a bunch of events where like lots and lots of people were coming, small, private, invite only. My son's first birthday party was in Dubai, my third kid. And there were 70 people that showed up. He's like, "Why does this only happen with you? Like others can't do this." He's like, "You have a special power." And he's like, "The thing is, it's not a chore for you. You genuinely draw joy from bringing people together. And that's helped you guys bootstrap the company." Our investors who end up buying half of the company also came from a Traction event we hosted. They're like, "Who runs this event?" And I get on the phone with them, and that turned into the deal over time. But
all roads lead back to community.
All roads lead back to community. And I said, "You know what? If I could do one thing in my free time," because as somebody who's been a workaholic for a very long time, I can't do anything. Let's sit and do nothing. So if I can do one thing, I'd love to educate the world on the power of community, right? If you look at it in 2023, marketing is taking a bloodbath, recession. CPMs are up. It costs twice as much to generate the same results from the same marketing tactics, right? And with generative AI, a lot of content is looking very similar. Businesses are spending less and less on marketing, and consumers are tired of clickbait, of spam, of pop-ups, of ads, of like sharing personal data to get access to crappy white papers and seeing the same thing. And so they're saying no to the old marketing, right? But if you see some of the best brands on the planet, they know this. They fall in love with their customers and help their customers become successful beyond the product or service. They are serving the aspiration. I don't know if you've ever seen this graphic, which is a product marketing graphic, which shows Mario who eats a mushroom and becomes Super Mario. Most people think what they're selling is the mushroom. They're not. The biggest brands are selling the aspiration of becoming Super Mario. And that's why Apple never advertises its features. It sells the aspiration, and it has this massive fan base and community. And its competitors are saying we have better features, right?
Mm-hmm.
Harley Davidson, perfect example. This company should have been bankrupt today. When the Japanese manufacturers came in, they were on the brink of bankruptcy. They made community a business strategy, not a marketing strategy. Employees went out in the communities and started writers' clubs. Writers became employees. It had oversight from the president. This community launched a huge Save Harley campaign, and over time, campaigns to serve breast cancer and so many other things, so many other causes, right? And so there was this common thread. Through our traction community, I had the fortune to talk to thousands of entrepreneurs, interview hundreds of them on the podcast, more than that on in-person events. And then for the book, I extended that by talking to a lot more community leaders and asking the same questions over and over again. And there was a very common thread, 13-step framework that I distilled and put together in this book, From Grassroots to Greatness. And that is the story, right? From Red Bull to Harley Davidson, to even Apple coming out of the computer club in California. It's all a grassroots story, right? Grassroots to greatness, 13 rules to build iconic brands with community-led growth. The one thing I'll tell you, though, as we, to summarize this, every iconic brand that has cult-like status has gone through a very common journey, which is you start with an audience. You have something to say, people listen to you. From Christ to CrossFit has this journey, okay? From Jesus Christ to CrossFit, from Christianity to CrossFit has this journey. You have something to say that's powerful, that resonates with your ICP. You have an audience. When you bring that audience together, it turns into a community when that audience interacts with one another and you. When that community comes together to create impact, you have a movement. And when that movement has undying faith in its purpose, it becomes a cult or a religion. So you need to figure out, how do I get an audience? Then how do I bring that audience together to create a community? Then I truly believe everyone wants to do good, but life happens, business happens, and I don't have the time. So how do you align your community or your company with a greater purpose and aspiration that's beyond profits for your company? And that's how you can create a movement like Harley Davidson or like CrossFit, right? How are you going beyond? Or even Mr. Beast, the biggest influencer on the planet right now, right? Raising $20 million to plant 20 million trees. You've now turned your community into a movement by driving them towards greater impact. And then once you do that consistently with a cadence, that movement will have undying faith in its purpose and defend you. They'll cut you, right? Like try talking to Bitcoin's a cult. Try dissuading them. They'll cut you, right? Try dissuading a CrossFitter. They'll cut you. And so that is a very common theme. I didn't specifically talk about it in this sense in the book, but I distilled, this is a good summary of summarizing those 13 steps into audience, community, movement, and religion or cult.
I'm trying to keep you from like recounting the entire book, because people need to get the book so they can have the full scope of the strategy that you've outlined and just the stories involved.
I'm gonna give the book away for the first couple of weeks for free, because that's my ethos. Is I did it to give, and when it does officially launch on September 17th, 12th or 17th, we'll sell the digital version for 99 cents because I want it to be accessible to all, and that is the goal. The goal was it belongs to the community. Right.
I think you've got a tattoo somewhere on your arm that says like it's all about community.
If I want to close with this. If ultimately yesterday's innovation is always today's option and tomorrow's commodity. Look at the GPS, was inaccessible. Then it became an option. Today there's CarPlay.
Yep.
If you build a community, you will not become a commodity. that is the ethos I live by. And you can download the book on LloydLobo.com. That's Lloyed. There's an E in my name, and there's a story related to my mom. I got bullied as a kid, and I'd ask her, why did you put this E in my name? And she said, I always wanted you to be an entrepreneur someday. And if you wanted to brand your name, you would never be able to trademark it with a common Lloyd. So I threw an E in there. So it's Lloyd, Lloyed, Lobo.com, or FromGrassrootsToGreatness.com. We'll have the book for a couple of weeks pre-sale for free, so you can download it. My only request is, once you download it, when it is available for 99 cents, do buy it and leave me a review. That would be much, much appreciated, and spread the word. Ultimately, I took from the community to get to where I am today, and this is my give back.
What a way to wrap us up today, Lloyd. There is so much to unpack in the things that you shared, and I mean, I even knew you were trying to limit yourself on the things you were sharing, because your brain was spinning at such a rapid pace. You said, I got 15 things that I'm trying to talk about in one in this stream. But thanks for just sharing and just really kind of distilling down the simplicity of a very complex process, and that has a universal application. And that's what we want to do with our community. We want to provide that value to primarily marketing agency owners too, so they can grow and scale their company. But much broader than that, we want to add value to the marketing community as a whole. And you've certainly done that today. Lloyd, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate your time, and have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thanks for hosting me. Love and peace, man. Great energy. Remember something. Communication is the rails on which communities are built, right? If you don't communicate well, all you'll have is an empty room. And one of the key philosophies of that is energy. You attract the energy you give out. I brought this energy because of you. So thank you so much for bringing your energy and bringing it out in me. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another great episode of the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we provide the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. To learn more, go to umbrellaus.com.